But a lot of times, like parents not intentionally just hold their child accountable in ways without giving them scaffolding, and they can't do it. And like, we're not so forgiving, or we're not even forgiving with ourselves. Like, we're not forgiving with our spouse. It's really hard to start every day like again.
Do you have ADHD? Maybe your kids have ADHD. Who better to talk about this topic and to really get into what it's like to be a Jew and to have it and how to really thrive than Dr. Sara Markowitz, who has been helping so many kids, so many people with ADHD, and she herself clinically has it. And she wrote the popular Kosher ADHD book with her colleague. We'll link that below. Thanks again to Relief for helping us with this episode. And you're going to dive right in. Be sure to stay at the end of this episode because I have some things personally to say about myself and ADHD.
Mental health, relationships, those are loaded topics and something that affects every part of our lives. But we aren't having enough open conversations about it.
And that's an issue.
Welcome, Dr. Markowitz. Thank you for coming from so far to talk with us about ADHD and your book and your work.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very privileged to be on this podcast, and I'm very excited to be here. Pumped.
Okay, awesome. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, what prompted you to write this book, Kosher ADHD? Like, why do we need this in the frum community?
Yes, I can.
Like, tell us what we don't know.
So I'm a clinical psychologist. Happens to be that right now, my main gig is running the founding director of an intensive outpatient program for Jewish women that we started within Achieve Behavioral Health 6 years ago. Before that, I was working a lot on group therapy. I'm a big fan of groups. I love the community. I find that there's so much power within groups. It's very nice. What does this have to do with ADHD? So as someone who has ADHD, I am always invested in trying to find things that I can grow with and find my best way to understand myself as like a side part. Like, I like to do it. My husband's a rav in a shul, so I like to like understand people. And one of the groups that I ran was CBT for adult ADHD. And I was doing a lot of ADHD work within the clinic. And I was spending time with families and noticing, oh boy, we have like a major area in the community that isn't being tackled. We have all the recommendations for kids with ADHD. And a lot of times you have kids with ADHD and it's such a highly genetic based type of thing that we have like parents who also have this issue, and all the recommendations we're making are not for them. Took a break. I did a lot of the work, and then I impulsively jumped into running an intensive outpatient program. You can't do it any other way because you have to love the Jewish community, see that there's literally nothing else that exists out there like this, and we have to help. And I've been using a lot of strategies that most of the women that come my way, many of them have ADHD. And I've been working on a lot of strategies that I can find to be helpful for them within groups. Come 7 years later, Dr. Tresner reaches out to me and he said, Sara, you need to write a book with me. Who's Dr. Tresner? He is a clinical psychologist in Israel who has been working for 32 years in the field, literally an expert in ADHD. He started a boys' high school. He started multiple programs, and he said, I've developed tons of wisdom. We need to bring this to the Jewish community in America. And I said, okay, I really believe in that. I don't say no often or really ever. It's something I work on to be mindful in time and how to do that with other women. And he said, no, we have to do this. We are losing people religiously, emotionally, like the amount of people who have ADHD who ends up not staying in the fold is astronomical. We could get into numbers. And my husband and I had just been sitting with two families. It was in March time that he reached out to us. That's when people find out that their kids are really not fitting in the school system. Mm-hmm. That's if everyone's on top of it, right?
Right.
And I said, okay. I said, we have to do better. And if all these families are struggling and these kids with ADHD are not able to make it, and these parents were crying to me and it's not doing it, we are going to find a way to make it work. And we put this book together, and And here we are. It took maybe the quickest we've ever done anything, and 2 authors together, one who has significant ADHD, that was like a ride and a half. He gets like a medal of some sort. And it is really been widely accepted. I said to him, we cannot write a book about ADHD without incorporating the adult part. Right. It's like we're missing the whole picture. We have to understand that it's a myth, that it's not impacting families as people get older. People think you grow out of it. It just looks different. It's the internal restlessness that you see in people who are like jumping from one job to the next. And it's awesome, except that it can be destabilizing for women. Everyone knows the 10-year-olds who is like climbing up the walls, and chutzpahdik, and whatever it is that you understand as like your image of ADHD, or like the guy who's made it big as an entrepreneurial. But the girls who are inattentive, or we don't know who they are, and we definitely don't know that in adulthood it could be debilitating, that, that when it comes to managing a household, which is meaningful, to be a Jewish mother and father, that's awesome. And at the same time, to be taking care of what could be very monotonous, like routine parenting, things that you need to, and having Shabbos every week, which is amazing. But all the details that go with like Jewish life, all the executive functioning that we have is really like taking people down. And people are struggling, and they're not able to make it work. And then they're not able to support their children, and families are really at the brink of like not doing well. And they're really not fine, and people don't talk about it. People talk about ADHD. Oh, it's so cool. Like, like
people throw it around a lot these days. Like, I have ADHD. This person.
Right.
I feel like people are very quick these days to say they have ADHD, but like, I guess to go a little bit more into what you're saying and maybe some more examples, like what does that actually mean? Probably some of the people saying it don't actually have it.
Right.
Like,
so on the one hand, the fact that like people are able, this is like an opening into the world of mental health, because ADHD is one of those very special things that on the one hand, it's like a neurological, like a brain-based kind of thing that we talk about. Like it's even known as a childhood disorder, which already is, somewhat problematic, that like that's how it was like originally known. And it's cool because it's the person who's able to do a lot of things. And in the world that we live in, it's very fast paced, pretty adaptive in certain ways.
Right.
The thing is, in my most favorite book about ADHD, I know it should be mine, right? Ours too, Kosher ADHD. It's awesome. I highly recommend it. I really do. Even though, people with ADHD have trouble reading, I would say it's for the loved ones of ADHD. We have a summary at the end of each chapter. And if we didn't say that this is just the first edition, get it out, we would have never finished it. But ADHD is actually like super duper debilitating. And right, what are you laughing about? What was I about to say?
I think it's just funny because the energy that you're putting into the book, and then to say that it's debilitating, it seems contradictory.
That is awesome. So I think everyone is going to hold that in terms of like understanding this presentation, which is, we're going to talk about like superpowers. So Living Without Breaks is a book by Dr. Martin Kutcher, and he has an amazing picture, an image. I love images, especially you understand that people with ADHD do really well with like audio recordings and also visual images and moving around and learning. Okay. Any environment that's not like really catering to that, probably you're going to lose people pretty quickly. And they're not going to do well. And he has a picture of all the things that we know, the inattentive, the hyperactive, on an iceberg. And under it has like everything else we know about like ADHD, like no sense of time, right? Input, like the emotion dysregulation, missing like certain social things because like you're moving so quickly, right? The many, trouble getting started, trouble like turning anything off, like the people who go to like can't get themselves to sleep in the world that we live in, right? Like who knows like when their day ends, and then it's hard to get up, like for Minion and for all these things. And then it also talks about the comorbidities. And then it talks about the comorbidities means like when you have, ADHD and then another mental health disorder or another learning disorder or multiple things. So someone could also have a little bit of the spectrum or a little bit of, and I say a little bit to sound non-clinical on purpose. And we're going to get back to like, because understanding what we talk about when we mean ADHD, but just understand the complexity. Imagine like this iceberg, and then how like most of the picture is everything under it.
Right.
And they're like, why is a person getting into car accidents more often? Why are there a higher level of divorce? Why is there, like kids who are way more depressed and anxious, and the list goes on and on. It's like ADHD is really nice, but when you're living with it,
right.
Mm-hmm. So as the person who's living with it, if it's not treated in the best way, and I would like to say it has amazing qualities, and there's a relentless quality to it. This doesn't just go away. You don't just like, I learned those skills in order to implement it. You ever set up a system for somebody with ADHD? It's like, we figured it out. You really feel like you solved the world's best puzzle. And then the next week, it's like you started from square one. And it's infuriating if you don't understand what ADHD is. And so I will describe like the clinical terms. But if you don't understand what it is, you don't like,
right. So you're saying like the world out there is just like ADHD inattentive or ADHD hyperactive, and those are the only sort of two symptoms that people focus on. But meanwhile, there's all this other stuff that is going on under the surface.
People throw around a very superficial understanding of ADHD, and the way that we really define ADHD, it's really a brain-based disposition. I'm going to go into like what that means, but it's basically the part that disposition means it doesn't have to come out like, it's not like definite that it's like manifesting or presenting itself in every minute all the time. So, but it's challenges within executive functioning. It's really a disorder of self-regulation, regulation of thoughts. So you're jumping from one thought to the next. Regulation of emotions. Emotion dysregulation is really a core piece. You're just like, why is this kid? Like you give out like lollies to all the kids. You always have a few kids who are just cannot get past, like they didn't get the color that they wanted. And you're just like, why, what is with you? Kind of like pull it together. But
they can't lose a game.
Oh, they can't lose it. Oh, they're intense. Right? It comes with emotional intensity. Again, as Russell Barkley, who is the guru of ADHD, he says, they have the same response that everyone wants to have, but people have a better set of brakes. Right? And so they know how to put the brakes on those. It's like, I want to keep my friends. So I don't want to be the one who's like, you're such a loser. Like, how could you do that? Can't believe it. So or the one who goes into their bedroom and like slams the door.
I was like, you cheated.
Yes.
Every game. The opposing team always cheated. It was really, really like, looking back, it's actually hilarious because they obviously didn't cheat. But I couldn't, as a kid, I can relate to this. I couldn't to such a degree that I realized I was losing friends this way. It could be I was losing friends for other reasons, but I blamed it because of that.
This is actually one of the. This is a very significant reason that. But
I stopped playing competitive sports for just to rein in this piece because I didn't want to. I realized I couldn't play a game competitively without like. Losing it on it when it was like he was at first, he was safe, he was out. I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to play competitively.
It's amazing that you had awareness to try and modify it, and it's also sad to give up something that you love so much. And the reality is that all or nothing thinking, black and white, is going to be a manifestation of this, right? And so. A manifestation, right? You're saying like when you're really emotionally intense and you experience things like, again, our best leaders are pretty passionate. Like, I've done a lot of things in my life. And if I didn't have very compassionate people around me who appreciated some of the strengths that come along with it, I mean, nebach on me, right? Because you could be a leader and want to do wonderful things and also be annoying to people, right? Like, I know, like, okay, everyone dial down the passion right now. We don't need this. Like it's a lot. But what people end up resorting to is like you swing to either be like, I'm chill. I'm not gonna, even with my kids, I joke, I'm like, I'm not competitive at all. Like really, because I don't know if I could fully be not, I mean, at this point I can, right? And our ability to change our thinking about ourselves and our experiences can be helpful. and learn. I love mindfulness. There's a lot of things I love about it, but that's like definitely a core component. Regulation could also be, like with the body, really in every part of life that you can imagine, like with behavioral regulation. That's a significant piece. And then it's just all over. It's the prefrontal cortex. I say it's the CEO of the person. So it's the part that's like, I have a vision. I could have a sense of the future. And then it's like, I know that I want to execute a plan to follow through with that, right? Because planning, prioritizing that this is what I want to focus on and not thinking about everything that's along the way, following through with it, getting started, knowing when to pause, how to get redirected. Every single one of these is an executive function. Now, people don't have to struggle with all of them, but people struggle with a lot of them. And the truth is, it's like the money is in knowing what the profile is for each individual and understanding what are helpful ways to help yourself, and to help people around you, and to recognize what that means. Just like a sub point when it comes to ADHD. So people do well based on the compassion of others and also sometimes by modifying the environment to be more successful. Like if I didn't have a phone that had reminders, and by the way, a reminder on my phone is actually not helpful if it doesn't tell me what the reminder is for. Like if I had an alarm on in my house, old school ways, and some people have this and this is what they have. And I'm not advocating you should have a certain type of I'm saying that the world that we live in has I'm going to think of a nerdy word, gadgets, I don't know a better word for it. Sorry about that. Actually, nerdy is cool. Or whatever, or whatever people want to think about it. No judgment. I'll get to the no judgment. No, definitely not here, right? But it, right, the no judgment zone. But if it doesn't tell me exactly what I need to be doing in the moment, I am like, oh yeah, I have so many things that are shooting through my head that I'm just get very absorbed because it's also about attention. Right? It's just the ability to regulate attention because people actually could be pretty attentive. I could be absorbed. I could do something for 6 hours. In fact, I love working on projects. If my life didn't get more complicated with multiple things that I was juggling as a Jewish woman, I'd be killing it,
Right.
But because that's not the reality and you have to transitioning from again, is stopping the attention of one thing, shifting attention and then getting new attention, pretty hard for someone. So we're talking significant differences. And what happens that they're struggling in an area of executive functioning. Imagine someone, a kid is absorbed in a game and you ask them to stop. As an adult, if you're in the middle of either one of you, right? Or in the middle of doing something that you're really absorbed in, the other one's and when you have ADHD, by the way, you're always no regard necessary. I will interrupt my husband. He will be in the middle of preparing a shear. I'm can we take care of this random thing that pops into my head? He's in the middle of something, right? But when it comes to kids, when they're in the middle of doing something and you just interrupt them, it's really hard for that. Adults would never do that. They'd be can you just wait a minute? The kids we're you need to come right now. And it's really hard for them to stop and to shift and to transition.
Right.
I'm just saying, thinking about it from an adult perspective, how wild it is what we will ask people, what we'll ask our children to do. It's just assume you will listen right now. It's not, these are all things that are really hard.
Right.
And then we're just and then we assume that they're not listening is intentional, right? It's how could you not listen to me? You don't respect me? If you cared about me, you would listen. I tell my husband, I'm I don't even listen to I interrupt myself. I'm so sorry for interrupting you. By the way, the fact that I joke about the stuff that I have, I don't, it doesn't mean that I'm not working on it. And I think that having ADHD is not an excuse, it's an explanation.
Right.
And it helps us understand ourselves.
I was going to ask you some questions about that.
It's not an excuse. This is not oh, I forgot dinner. Okay, I have ADHD. No, I'm an adult. It might be harder, but scaffolding, the notion, what is scaffolding? And I love it. And I find that it's helpful and I find that's helpful in many areas of life, but it's something that's used specifically with kids with ADHD. And I think that we all can use this in different areas. Scaffolding is the notion that you provide a level of support for someone who doesn't have that level of skill, and then you scale it back as they get to know the skill. You scale the scaffolding, you build it up and you scale it back and then, the building is built. And sometimes when it comes to certain scaffolding, there could be that certain people are never going to be fully without needing certain support. I would say, like, I don't think I should ever fully do like my accounting. I'm just like not as attentive to the details. Like, chances are something like high stakes like that, I'm going to need support. But we use scaffolding in many areas, and people can do really much better when you have certain scaffolding to help support. So an example of scaffolding could be something that I internally do or something externally. So my phone, my reminder is something that we do. If I want to ask my husband to do it and he is like okay with me asking him, if I have a friend who's going to remind me about carpool, that's scaffolding, right? Like,
Right.
And the community can be extraordinarily helpful. We would never tell someone, this is going to sound crass, but you never tell someone in a wheelchair, like, just get up the stairs. Like, you would provide a ramp. A ramp is scaffolding, right? And until we know what a person's ability is and how much room, like what are certain limitations and like where is there room for growth, and what are the areas, and everyone could grow, but what's the extent? We could be disappointed on an ongoing basis that our people around us are not doing things that we ask of them. But like, again, would you ever ask someone who is in a wheelchair, even if it's short term, but to go up without like some support?
Right.
We just wouldn't do it. Like, I wouldn't say to you guys, unless you're plumbers, like, take these pipes and build the plumbing in this building. You probably would get overwhelmed.
Can I ask you a question about your personal story? You said
sure.
you have ADHD. Is that can you discuss as a kid how that was? And perhaps is that why you became a therapist doing this? Is that did that motivate you?
That is awesome. Okay. So I was, my first thought is you should ask the people around me what it was like to, for my ADHD. I have definitely a different presentation than the classic woman that we think about with ADHD. I sometimes joke that I have like the 10-year-old boy presentation of ADHD. Now you're only going to see me like that. So no, I think, but when I was younger, I just was full of energy. I was very blessed that I went to the schooling that I went to, especially for high school. I got to play ball a lot. I went to camp and I was just able to have a lot of outlets. I know by middle school, I say the grace of my principal at that time, who did not kick me out, but I spent almost every other class, in the principal's office. Yeah, or just going for long walks, and the truth is that I deserved it. I sometimes would say things that were, or would talk incessantly. I was a kid speaking to all my friends, but then I definitely was impulsive, and not intentionally.
Right. So how did you feel always getting in trouble when you knew that you weren't doing this purposely? And I'm sure you probably didn't want to be doing it.
Yeah. And
now you're getting in trouble, or people, I don't know, I'm assuming, it could be, I'm wrong, but people are looking down on you and you're feeling ashamed.
Yes. Ashamed.
How does that translate? Because you were saying before how we're losing
losing people
because of this. And I think that
I'm going to jump to my adult ADHD. I think that I got away in the high school that I went to had tons of extracurriculars, and I always thought I wasn't so smart. I just had to work my really, really hard and take other people's notes, the grace of my friends. And I was in a system that the extracurricular activities that I did was made it oh, you're cool. I could get away with stuff. Without that, I would have been broken. I for sure, my own mom, bless her, she almost kicked me out of camp one summer, in the best ways. She said, Sarah Winkler, do you want to go home and be with your father, for the days? We would joke about it. That was the head of the camp at that time actually told me, our family best friend, Rabbi Ibi Haftig, he sat with me. And this is when I shaped up a bit. And he's you are a great leader and we want to be able to reward you for it. And you have to decide if you're going to lead people to do to get into trouble or to do things that are good. And I really shifted and I became part of my, who I was as a kid with a lot of spirit that I was always trying to get kids. And as a counselor, in camp, I became that person who was get everyone into things. even as a Rebbitzin, like, but if you ask me to get things organized and like my kids are like, do you remember that appointment? And if I don't like write it down on a whiteboard and then like remember to check it, I feel like really like down on myself. And honestly, like getting my brain organized for this is like painful. And I know that I apologize tons. And I definitely feel bad about, things that I've done or like my incapabilities as I've gotten older. Most kids feel it when they're younger, right? Most kids are really in systems. Like I say, if I was in a different type of system, I forget about it. I would have been the kid who's like, how can you ask those questions? And I'm a very spiritual. I love singing and dancing and totally like all these fun things. But if I would have been told sit quietly in class, in the meetings at work, I'm like sitting in the chair, like moving, like I really, this is like even trying to treat myself since like my 4th year of grad school when I formally got diagnosed. And then I understand that like for teachers, it's annoying. Like it really is very difficult to like be that person. And most kids are just broke, like they really are broken. And I see it like parents, the parents just are calling them out all the time. And you're just like, why can't you be like your siblings? Like they're sitting and davening nicely. And even when you're cutting them some slack, but you don't know what to do with them, right? You on the one hand, also like you feel when it's a system of a lot of kids, right? And one kid is like being reactive to the rest of them. So you can't just sit quiet. I mean, we'll discuss what you can do, right? But you feel like my job is to be mechanech this child. I have to discipline this child. And I need to do right now. The rest of the kids need to see that I'm taking this seriously. I can't just be like, Leslie. And we just said before, it's an explanation. It's not an excuse. So like, what do I need to do to help this kid? Like, I can't just say like, do nothing in your life. And like, now you just figure it out. Like, that's not the answer either. Right. So like, how do we like figure out what to do with these kids? But these are the kids that call your attention so many more times. I mean, I just like, it's as if like the camera was here. Like my whole like schooling experience was like zoom in on like Sarah Winkler, and I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry. It's just, you're louder. You're messing up more. You're missing pieces more. You're like, wait, what just happened? Like you kind of miss that you're noticeable. And the research shows that kids who have ADHD are being called out so many more times. And
Do you agree with the of treating kids with like medicine, or because like I see you have a ton of personality and that's awesome, right? But like kids that do take, I'm being serious, kids that do take, medication, I've seen their energy levels drop, and that has a real effect on their personality. So parents have this like,
it's really late in the day right now, so any medication is not going to be like relevant after this time of night. Putting that out there.
We're off by now.
I could be like totally on the wrong dosage.
That's epic. No. But what's your?
It is. First of all, I'm putting this out there. Everyone should get the help that they need, and I'll come back to like, why did I do AD? Like, did I go into the field because of this? Not fully. Although my interest within this is definitely like in hindsight, I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. But, it would require a lot of intent, forward thinking to have planned. Like, this is why I went into the field. I went into psychology because I wanted to really help. It's going to sound trite. Like I wanted to like really work within the Jewish community and be helpful. And I felt like evidence-based stuff. Like we have like a lot of intuition and spirit, but what is the evidence-based? Like what does the evidence say and the research say about like the things that we're trying, so let's do that. And then I felt like it's really hard to make decisions. When you have ADHD sometimes and in life, but you're really indecisive. That's like, that is something that can be hard for people with ADHD. It's very annoying, being indecisive. It's something that we can work on. There's a lot of ways to work on these things. But it was like a way to punt. Like I was like, oh, okay, I will get like, I will amass a lot of skills, come back and bring it to the Jewish community. And that is how I'm going to do that. So your question, and I'm like embarrassed to like write things down, but I really should. It would be helpful if I was like also
You
writing
want a
things
favorite?
down.
You want a favorite?
No, I think I can get it, but other times, because like there are two parts to your question. I'm like, I'm never gonna remember part 2 about that. That was like 2 questions ago. But you were saying,
Well, what do you think about medication?
oh, medication. Okay,
And then
so
does it dull personality? So then that's a problem.
Awesome. Right, personality is all like I gotta contain it also. So medication, it is brain-based disorder, and I'll say, this is not. I'm not giving like a professional opinion. Everyone should consult with what's necessary, but medication can be really helpful for people. Like again, if someone's driving and they're not attentive and their brain is jumping from one thing to the next, it really can lead to like danger.
Dangerous.
It's danger. It's dangerous, and there's like real consequences to, again, if you have someone who's working so extra hard or they're getting yelled at all the time, and and even in an understanding environment, it's really doesn't feel good when you can't put the brakes on certain things, because socially it's going to bother you. Like, right? We tell a 10-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid, like, oops, that person made some really offensive comment to you. Just like ignore it. They have ADHD. Like, I've actually tried to tell that to my kids, and they're like, okay, so, but this girl also is really like mean to everybody. And that's not totally like adaptive. And while there's a lot that we can do, so, like it really can help. However, pills do not replace skills. When you're about to do like a mic drop and then you mess it up, you're bad news.
I like that. That's a good one.
But yeah, pills do not replace skills. And it is a disservice to the community that we think that ADHD, and this is where I think ADHD is treated with medication, and then it's like a rude awakening when it's just like a drop in the bucket. It's helpful, but it's like so a part of the picture. And, if you are not learning about what does it mean that your child has ADHD, right? How does this manifest? How are the pills, so pills help you focus your attention. If a person took the medication and then has to pick out their clothing, they could spend like hours in their closet, like picking out their clothing. Like then they decide to like organize their closet, like meaning you have to learn how to, work on having a schedule or moving people along, like, what to focus on. And so it's more complex. Then your question about, does it dull personality? Like, I see that people can say that. And by the way, stimulants are not always effective with certain kids, and certain kids need like a cocktail of multiple types of things. And many people go into it thinking like, I just need to give them a stimulant, like, which is something that, and stimulant is ironic because you're like, this person needs to chill. Right. Why are you like giving them caffeine, Right. Because it's actually the underact, like it means the brain is actually underactive in this area and you need to amp it up. It's the opposite.
It's counterintuitive. Yeah,
counterintuitive. But many people who try it will see that it's only for a certain amount of time that happens, and in certain environments it's effective, and really kids can perk up and have like other aspects to them. But again, people have to try it, and you have to weigh the cost and benefit.
Right.
And again, if like a kid's self-esteem is going to be broken and they can't make friends, and it's not so helpful. And when a person has a child with ADHD, things you have to shift. Like Hashem gives you the neshama that He gives you, and it is going to require scaffolding. Like, right, setting up an environment for someone to succeed is going to look different. Why do I have to be so involved in this kid's play date? The rest of my kids, like, I set up a play date and like I go make food for Shabbos. I don't know, like I don't want to have to be there and have to be intervening, but sometimes we do. And for these kids, they will need more from us. They will, if we don't set them up, like chances are they're not going to remember to bring in their homework for the next day. Then they're going to get yelled at, or they're not going to remember if the school doesn't set them up the right way. They're not going to bring it home. And like, if you're not checking, like it's an effortful way. And we have to shift to say like, I want to be able to understand what my child needs. And then I want to help them create that environment. And if support is the only, like, I might need support to do this because this is heavy lifting. It's not easy, right? If this was an easy fix, then you wouldn't have kids like flunking out of the school system, March, April, May, June, July, where the schools are calling you to say, this kid can't be in our school. And it's happening, and the numbers are growing up. And educators I come from a family of educators on the other side. Like, they want to do well by our children. They went into, chinuch because they want to do this. Like, so there's a disconnect, and we have to really figure out like how to help these kids. So yeah, medication is a component of it, but how are we going to like find an environment that is going to best fit these children,
right?
And the families that we have, and it's the opposite of the world that we're living in. If we're saying, okay, you both need to work, okay? 2 parents need to work in order to be a Jew who can afford to be a Jew, okay?
Watch kosher money.
Yeah. Kosher money, baby, Look, okay, see, we're getting it all in. Any other Langer brothers? Okay, yeah, baby, living l'chaim. Okay, so all good stuff. She's like, oh, man. It took over 2 hours to get here after a long work day. And I just got back from Israel on Friday, thank God. And hosted Shabbos. So, okay, we're good.
Yeah, that's right.
See, this is like using the energy, and then you're like, okay, a lot of energy. Right? But we have to like modify a system at this point.
We're saying the system that we're in right now is not really working, and we need to do something different.
Yeah. So two parents, right? You have 2 parents who are working, and now you're telling the parents, like, you need to be more involved in your child's life, and you need to be attentive, and you need to be around more. And if they're in the school system and they're not able to daven, so you have to like bring them to school late, and you have to pick them up early because they can't do social, they really can't do this subject or that subject. And, we don't have the resources to like have someone check in with them like every other like few minutes. Like, it's not happening. You know what it's like at home? Like, don't you understand that? We're like, yeah. Like, we get it. We live with it all the time. Like, we get it. Like, don't you get that we're living with this? Like, it's just, and everyone wants to understand each other, but with a superficial understanding of ADHD, like, the parents who hear that their child has ADHD is defensive. The school is like not able to handle because it's way more than we're expecting. The parents are not able to give what they need. It's just like, and then people are just left defeated and then unhappy and then children are the collateral damage.
Right. We'll be right back to this week's conversation, but we first want to acknowledge the fact that so many people go to therapy. We know this is something that's happening. We know everyone's going through some form of challenge in their life. And if you're always thinking, hey, I wish I had the right therapist to talk about this with, you could call Relief. Their website is reliefhelp.org. You give them a call at 718-431-9501 or send them an email at info@reliefhelp.org. And whatever it is, Relief is there to be the shadchan, to find the right person to connect you with. And you should definitely go ahead and look in the show notes, the links that are there to connect with Relief so they could help you get over the next challenge or the challenges you're going through in your life with the right person. Now back to this week's episode.
We used to discuss like scaffolding before. What would you say are some of those systems or ideas that parents can incorporate into their things that they're doing anyway for kids?
Totally.
How do we change this broken system?
How do we change the broken system? Okay, so number 1 is your perspective and understanding that this is like your child and it's not intentional, the way that they're acting, and start preparing before they like get there. Like, you kind of like know what's going to happen. As Russell Barkley says, he's like very rare. He's another guru in the world of behavioral stuff. Like, it's very rare that you have a child where like you didn't understand like where it was coming from. Like, it's pretty predictable. You're like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. So like, let's figure out how to like get ready before it happens. Like, we know the things that are hard for them. So let's figure this out. So what do we do? Talk about like WOMAX. What
was that?
I love acronyms. And some people are just like, don't need acronyms for things. Just tell me what it is. But it's like a working memory activation cue. Okay. Kids need things that are like on, like, they need things that are.
Wait, so working memory activation cue. Okay, got
right? So Moda'ani in the morning. They want to do it, but like, you wake up in the morning, there's no sense of time. There's no sense of anything. So you just like wake up and you forget working memory. I'm like, can't give this like, it's Finding Nemo, or like the Dory in Finding Nemo. I was like, what? Like, you're with me now. You're seeing it.
P. Sherman. As There we go.
You're like, oh, nice to meet you. I would say I get very excited by by old ideas because it's like new. But working memory activation cue helps people where it's like a whiteboard. These kids that they have a trouble. If you tell them to do something in the morning, so you're like, I need you to get ready for school. Okay, what does that mean? They don't know how to break things down into each task. They don't remember that what they need to do in the moment they need to do it. So you need to have like, whether it's a whiteboard or different like things hung up of like the main things that you do. Like, okay, this is Moda'ani, and you remind them to do it in the morning, or there's an alarm that goes off, or whether it's, the things that they need to do for school. And then you have to remind them to do it. You need to show them, or you need to take a picture of them with like someone that they think is so cool doing like the mitzvah that they want, right? Like these are things that you want them to like look up to.
You would
these
put a
things
whiteboard in their
So it would
room?
be visual, some kind of visual
things,
cue.
whether it's visual.
Yeah.
I use whiteboards as like an adult. Like you might do cool, like they could, by the way, kids love using computer stuff.
I'm going to show you all my charts for my son
charts.
after. You're gonna
And
like
by the way,
this.
as they get older, they love to be involved in that. And they give them autonomy whenever you can. Right? Let them be involved in those things. And you have to explain why you're doing stuff. Don't take like the motivation, why our kids like love certain, there's certain areas that they love, like when they feel connected to it, they find it meaningful.
Right.
If you can help them find things that they're doing to be meaningful, or even you say like, and you might have to reward them more than they would with praise, with your attention, with like, this is a big deal. Like they need more of that than other kids do. And why? That's just how their brain works.
Need it sooner.
And they, yes.
Right?
And they,
like that.
yes.
I think that's an important piece. Like people will make a chart, let's say for their kid with ADHD, and you'll have to get, 3 weeks of doing whatever it is, then you'll get the product. They're never getting to the 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like way too far off.
long.
Same way, by the way, with certain times in davening, right? Like davening is like, if you're not getting it right now, or like you can't imagine Hashem in front of you yet, and you haven't yet connected to like, we're also serious and we appreciate it, but for kids who don't yet like appreciate it, and it's like this long-term thing that they can't imagine, and then you're asking them to sit for like, just imagine all the things that are required in it. Yes, so that's like a beautiful point. It's really that they can't hold long-term, like there's no sense that they can't hold long-term stuff. So you need to reward it. I hate doing notes. Oh my God, like notes for work. If you like see someone, you have to do notes like legally. I would say like, Sarah, you can only text your friend after you do notes. Like I'm an adult. Like I'm an adult. Like I can do whatever I want to do, but like I like make these things up. We call about like pairing things. Like do something that's like really not fun, but like then you're gonna do something more fun after, because like when you pair them, because that's what's going to motivate you. Otherwise, you're not going to sit and do things. It's experience as torturous. It's not the same as other people, like experiencing something that's intolerable. It's experienced in a heightened way. Like boredom is very difficult for someone who has ADHD. It's like just more. So that was like a great idea. You guys probably could know more that, like in certain ways. No, there are a lot of things that we talk about like within the book about like how to do it. And it's really, again, there's like the mindset. You have to know what your kid's up to. And like we say IDF, I say intensity, duration, frequency. So when you measure progress, whether it's like seeing something get better, but like what are they up to now? And then like let's say they're throwing a tantrum and you look at them and you're like, nothing's getting better. A lot of times people like jump ship from any help that they're getting because you're like, well, they still have so many problems. Like you're like, time out. Like, how are you measuring progress? You have to start to notice where they're starting, and then every area and like the nuances of what is changing, and find ways to, and preemptively you want to say like, you say, this kid is like really kind, or you say like, you're going to be like Arona Cohen, like you are so kind. But before, when they're even doing like nothing, a behavior specialist once told me, she's like, you're going to find the kid when they're eating dinner and not talking to say like, you are so quiet. Like you are being so respectful to your siblings right now. Like
saying do it beforehand.
Like do it. Like find those moments, find what you want them to be, and do it beforehand. Sometimes I say, I can't prepare the stuff the night before, but there's certain kids like you prepare like the clothing the night before, and it's like changes so much. Like, and I say parents have to work on systems themselves, and like what is going to help implement the system. Some people might need help from outside to get a system that's like set up again. Like I say, like
what would be like a good system?
Wait, can I just say
go,
to her
go.
point though? Because you sort of started with this, that we're telling parents that maybe they have ADHD
Yes.
to create the system and these charts and all
Yeah,
these things.
it's-
And is
it's
that even possible?
right.
And then what do they do?
Right. So sometimes I always say in our community as adults, like if people can, like outsourcing stuff is like amazing. Or let's work as a community. I like to be more creative. There are people who love to do things that are like detail oriented. To me, I'm like, why would you want to do that? Right.
Like
they
accounting.
love it.
Accounting sounds
Like accounting.
actuary.
Right. Or like just,
Disaster.
yeah, like some people are like, I will be on the sisterhood, but like I just can't do anything that's like coming up with ideas, but like I will send the emails out and I will like just do these things. And there are people whose brains work like that and they love it. Like we as a community need to find the different profiles of people and start working together. The people who are great at it, you show me what the system should look like. And then, if certain people are like can set it up themselves and other people, then we need to find, like I always say, a chabura. You have a chabura or a chavrusa. You have a chavrusa in learning. You should have a chavrusa when it comes, and it can't always be your spouse, right? When it comes to a friend who like, okay, we're working on this for our child. Like, how are you doing with this? Like,
I love
like,
it.
and
That's
I
great.
have to say, I one of my close friends, I joke that, she says often like, I think I have like dementia or Alzheimer's. I'm like, no, it's just ADHD. You just didn't know what it was. Like, and you only know it as you're older. So like, you don't define that as ADHD, I laugh about it, but if you don't know that you had ADHD, like, so we like,
You work with each other.
We encourage each other. And again, when you have ADHD, like you're wise, like you can know what to do to be helpful, but you can't get it. You can't necessarily do it yourself. I say like, there's certain people who go to therapy and it's like, to understand things more and develop insight. And there are other people like where like you're going in order to be able to like follow through on the things that you need, or like people go to coaching. ADHD is not necessarily like, therapy is not necessarily indicated for the child with ADHD. In fact, it's not. Right?
Right.
Like most of the time they'll say like parenting, people will be like, what do you mean my parenting is not good? It's like, no, it's not going to be effective. Like learn ways to understand and become more effective. Again, a lot. And if you know that you're not in a regulated, like healthy mindset, or you're not able to enforce something, so then just like give up for that like moment and then like show up again and like try again the next day. But we need a lot of support. Even if you're like the queen of executive functioning, certain things like you'll be wiped. You'll be wiped. Your kid might say, or your spouse might say like, just really something that's so mean, and then they'll actually feel bad about it later. And a lot of times we're not so forgiving. We hold on to it. Like a kid, like will say like, you're the worst parent ever, right? When a kid's 16 and saying that on a daily basis, and like if you at the end of the day are not going to be able to like be more forgiving, that dynamic's just going to continue.
Spiral.
And because you're kind of like, you're older, like I kind of expect more from you. And I'm not saying that you can't hold on to it and say like, you can't talk to me like this, or like right? Like there are ways to navigate it. But a lot of times like parents not intentionally just like hold their child accountable in ways without giving them scaffolding, and they can't do it. And like, we're not so forgiving, or we're not even forgiving with ourselves. Like we're not forgiving with our spouse. It's really hard to start every day. Like, again, you're like, it's like, how did you, like a lot of times spouses will say like, I had a long conversation with my spouse and this is what I need. And they're like really receptive and they did it 1 or 2 times. And then it's like, they forgot. And it's like, how often could we do this? Now, that person really has to get support in order to be able to like do more and to be more effective. And the other person, like, I need to remind you again, like I asked you to get milk, but that's a cost benefit. Like, okay, maybe I have to remind you, like we have to like kind of like determine what is like high stakes, like really like what we care the most about. And like then our, spouse can like figure it out and get support, but like to like expect them to be doing everything that is counter to like what their strengths and weaknesses are, it's not going to lead to shalom bias. And there's some wonderful things, but yeah, you might have to like remind them to get the milk, but like you might say like, I'll be mavater, or you'll say like, right now is a time that I really want you to focus on me. So, but then the spouse really needs to know, I just got home from work and I really want to. My brain isn't working right now. I'm like overwhelmed and like I just need to like kind of like space out for a little bit and I will be so attentive. And then the spouse, okay, so, but I really need you right now. But if that's happening all the time, I need you right now, like, demanding like, well, you see, like you need to do this. Shalom Bayis is not going to be
Right.
the way that we want it to be. And again, there's so many awesome qualities that come with someone who is spontaneous and fun and great and like, and like livening up the Shabbos table. And then at the same time, you're just hey, like other things that are really annoying. And again, it's very hard to understand, especially when like the gender difference, right? Like for a woman who's an adult who has that, my husband is really a tzaddik. And like, I knew him for a long time. We're almost married, thank God, 20 years. That's like, something. And he really is like like, I think we spent like a good quarter of our marriage in the beginning, like looking for my keys. Like in the old days, they didn't have like cool things that like help you with that. Like,
Right.
oh my God, like that's so nice of him, right? Like,
That is nice.
that's like really nice. He's like, oh man, like, get it together. But thinking about like what actually probably has helped prompt me the most, it's that my husband is like so loving and so different in terms of the response, and that I was able to understand things that like, that's like more of like the ADHD. Like I'm like, there's so many unique things that I've like learned over the course of time about ADHD, and like, but the world of psychology I went into, like I said, for like these other things, but I've gravitated to a lot of like the work and ways that like understanding a psychological approach to things, because that's like the non-judgmental
Right.
approach to people. Like it's not helpful anyway. Like we
Right.
always say like you have the coach who's like yo, like, or the Rebbe who's like, I'm gonna work you hard. We're gonna be, we're gonna work hard. We're gonna be so intense, and or like people who are on a diet. Think of like your internal voice, and they're just like, good, like they're mean to you, and they're like, you could do better.
Like tough
and,
love.
Tough
Right.
love, right? Initially, like that helps, and then you just like kind of broken. It doesn't motivate you anymore. You just feel bad about yourself, and then like you're doing it out of fear, and it's not really effective.
Right.
And there's so many things that we could be doing that could be so much more effective. Like, what else can we do? And again, right? You have a kid at the Shabbos table. You're gonna expect them to sit the whole time at the Shabbos table. You have to ask yourself, like, what do I really want them here for? What do they love? Like Dr. Chesner, he actually has like plug on a website, like to people who use the
Yeah.
internet. So kosher-adhd.com. That's like actually a pretty funny ADHD thing. Like it's only kosher-ADHD because we bought kosher-adhd.com. Couldn't remember the password.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So ADHD, and there's like an amazing video that his son, who's actually in the army right now, and everyone should be safe and Bezrat Hashem come home. And he's a cinematographer, videographer, whatever. He made this amazing video, and it's a kid who has ADHD in shul on Shabbos. So like he just can't sit. And then but then it has like, and at the table, and then his father like prepares him. He's like, you're going to come in for this specific part of the Chadodi. You're going to sing loud. This is exactly, you have to be very explicit, right? We say the 5 Ps. You got perspective, then you need to plan, then you need to practice and perform, right? Like, and praise, like all these things. And it has him like showing him this is what you're going to need to do. And then he comes back and it has the Shabbos table. And this kid was like really like putting stuff on his head, like like taking the cup and like doing silly things and like bothering his sister. And then they realize he loves singing. And Dr. Chesner talks about like, what is this concept of kosher ADHD? How do we really help? And he spoke about like, this guy is going to be the conductor. So now he's like, this really happened with one of his students. Like one of his, the people he was working with, that was a recommendation. Like he's going to be the conductor at the Shabbos table. So then he's going to come back and he runs Zmiros. And for like his life, he was like running Zmiros at the Shabbos table. And all of a sudden he's not like just at the Shabbos table. He's like the king of the Shabbos table. Like that is amazing.
Yeah, it's
and
very
yes,
smart.
it requires so much out of the box thinking. It does. I will say that I spend a lot of time with families. My husband and I both actually spend a lot of time with families thinking out of the box, like how to support this kid in the community. And if you're not someone who's like that, so then there are other people who are, and we got to find each other.
Right.
This is where the community has got to get together, and we need to like have solutions and like, pool our resources. And again, Dr. Chesner is really like amazing and wanting to help people to understand the environment and their child, like fit them in the right way. And then we are going to own it, and we're going to work with schools, and we're going to educate the schools. And then hopefully we'll then we have to
Right.
work with schools to like see how they can develop a more relationship-based approach to school. Right? This is about the relationship with the kid and connecting with the kid and connecting the child with the material and finding meaning and being able to find things that work with them. We could do it. Like we really could do it. It's going to take supporting parents and schools and the child and ourselves with ADHD. But as a community, you're seeing in Eretz Yisrael right now, right? Like
Right.
the amount of community and in the world, we feel like, more alone, but also like, we have a Am Levad Yishko, like we're okay, we're alone, but like we're not alone. Like we are together and like we can do this. I really believe in our ability to do it. It's just figuring out the way that works, for different people.
It's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to like sort of summarize like your recommendations,
Yeah.
you're not saying not to have expectations. You're saying
No.
we want to have expectations, but it has to be
Okay.
something reasonable.
Yes.
And we have to help them
Absolutely.
get there with support. So maybe the expectation of sitting the whole davening is not realistic today, but maybe that's where we want to get. So let's slowly take steps to get there.
SMART goals.
SMART goals, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I love SMART goals.
Like, SMART goals, right? They have to be specific, like very specific with what you want. They have
Smart
to
is
be
the
measurable. It has to be
Right.
measurable, right? It can't be something that like, you were such a good boy today. Like, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a good boy? Measurable, like be very specific in the behaviors. It means that you came in, you opened your sitter, you sat down next to me, right? It has to be attainable. If you want him to sit for like 45 minutes and he's like literally maybe like in there for 5 minutes and then like under the seat, we're talking younger, like older, it will look different. Then it has to be like relevant. We say realistic, but we also say relevant. Relevance is
Right.
something for ADHD. It's got to be relevant. Like connect them to it. Like show that. Like explain to them a story of
Right.
like the Shema and how it was like amazing, and it has to be timely. Timely is like the things that we reinforce. So you have to like have timely means that when you tell it like. You have to like watch them and do it, and you're just like if you're not going to be able to like say, "Hey, you did a great job today," then and actually like follow up on it, it's probably not going to work. And then you're going to say, why didn't it work? We did all these things, but we have to like really be attentive to details, which is why for the adults who really struggle with these things, like get support. Because if we come back and say, well, I tried to do this and it didn't work. And then we blame there's like a no blame approach. We say like, we got to be, not the Esav, but the David HaMelech, right? Like
Right.
Esav is an Ammoni, it's the same temperament, but the David HaMelech, like help people like to help your child to understand like what are the things that they're like good at and are interested in, like work on those, see if you could like bring that into specific like other areas, and like also teach them. But you're right, we don't give up expectations. We just have to have realistic expectations, compare a child to themselves. Like what can Sarah do?
Right.
Like, and then
Right.
like how I've come a long way. When I was dating my husband, I used to put him on hold. This was like, I was for a long time. And then we took a break. I was like young and stupid. I don't know. It was like totally not like paying attention. And then a few years later when we were dating again and I put him on hold and I came right back. He's like, then I knew. Like, I really worked on myself. Like you can really make a lot of changes, right? You can use so many skills for you to get emotionally regulated and mindful and being a role model. You can't talk to we can, but you want to be a role model for all the things that you want from them. So if like you're trying to ask them to be more emotionally regulated when you are not emotionally regulated, then that's likely not going to take. And that's why it goes back to like what, how can you work on the specific parts of yourself, whether you struggle with ADHD or you don't, right? But and just be really compassionate, really understanding. I love the dialectic. Two opposite things you hold at the same time creates a new reality, right? You could be understanding and compassionate, and it's the and. It's not either or. And hold someone accountable and take ownership for what it is like, for the parts of themselves, right? So they're going to make mistakes. So we're going to be compassionate, and we're going to be compassionate to ourselves, because if we beat ourselves up like that coach or whatever, like, the person who's intense, it's not going to help. And also like, if they just say like, just do things and take ownership without compassion, they're not going to work. If you just, if you're just compassionate without like giving them scaffolding, holding them responsible for more, giving them the support that they need to do it. And then, moving that like, moving that along, and people could do so much. There's so much that people could do. And then again, for the things that you can't do, outsource, right? Like, and see where they need additional support. And then for the other things, yeah.
We're just like to wrap up, where can people find this support
Right.
that you're talking about?
Like, awesome.
Like you're saying outsource, like find support, and
Right.
people are probably listening saying like, I need that. Where do I
Like,
get that?
Let's
Help
do
me
that.
find
Right,
it.
right. Okay. So like for some people, it's like, like an ADHD coach can help certain people. Like in Kosher ADHD, we do like parenting like groups also, but we're also working on creating a set of groups that will be like peer support groups, right?
That's
People
great.
should start making systems. Like people could already start like a WhatsApp chat. A lot of people are actually pretty hesitant. But then the more events that we have, we could do like an event to say like, just, it doesn't have to be stigmatized, but it could be like supporting like, an out of the box child, or call whatever you want to call it. Like, hopefully
Right.
we can get to a point where ADHD is not stigmatized, but like there is a recognition when you say ADHD that it's like a weight, that it's a lot and it requires a lot. And then we're working. So when it comes to that, so they can reach out to kosher-adhd.com, and we want to work within the communities for communities to set up their own peer support groups,
That's
even for
great.
the adults. Like for adults, ADHD, I think that in addition to a supportive group for accountability, meaning you actually need accountability more often. That's like someone like holds you like responsible
Right.
for what it is. It actually helps the person. That's probably something that's missing. If you could like cut this out a bit earlier, wait till the end to get to the setting up systems of accountability is what helps someone follow through with things. So groups will help someone, like whether it's a group or a chavrusa, something that's going to hold, or a coach, whatever it is that person's comfortable with, that's going to hold you accountable. But sometimes people have to learn. I think very often we have to learn the skills first. We have to learn the skills for adult ADHD, like certain things to like for people, whether it's just a coach or some people are not comfortable with groups. And I would say, let's work past that, because
Right.
groups are way more cost effective. There is so much that you learn from other people who are struggling with the same thing.
Right.
And when you hear the story, you're like, oh my God, I thought I was crazy. And you're so not crazy. In fact, you guys end up like, everyone ends up laughing at like the wild things that are just like, oh, that's so ADHD. Or like, of course, like we so get what you're feeling. And it's like for it to be normal, like you're more involved in it when you need to be, like more drop-in style eventually. And an online group that's going to have that, like that's going to be
great.
really Kosher ADHD, and
Right.
people can ask their questions. And to do that, ironically, even though I don't always read the books, and there's probably should be more pictures in this book. The book can be helpful. Like people could do like a book club too, about these things and to work on it. But we want ambassadors of people who want to bring this to their community and find ways to work it out. We're already in touch with a number of communities for the upcoming year. And again, right, this is for me like an additional thing that we're doing too, but like there's so many people who are passionate about this because it deeply affects their life. And like those people can like step up now, like become an ambassador of whatever that's going to look like for each person. And let's find ways to change this within the community. We're gonna work with the schools, and I believe that come back. We'll do like a follow up in like a year. Let's see like where
That's
we
awesome.
are.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Let's see where we are. We're gonna do research, and we're gonna have like different outcomes.
Awesome.
Ezrat Hashem.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this week's episode. We're back. That's an Issue is back. We took a little break, guys, but we're back, and we have so many incredible That's an Issue episodes to delve in, talking to different psychologists, Rabbanim, people who've gone through the experience. When it comes to mental health, we are here to help show you that there's a lot of people going through it, and we want to be that resource for you. Of course, if you need any actual mental health help, you could go to our friends at Relief. They're wonderful, and they're really good at making the shit up between you and the proper therapist, psychologist, person in your life that can help you. If you have not picked up the Kosher ADHD book, I highly, highly recommend it. We have a link in the show notes. And something I wanted to share is, oh, by the way, if you're still watching this on YouTube, tell us below your thoughts on ADHD. Maybe you've experienced, struggles in your life regarding it, or your children. We want to hear from you, and we love to use our YouTube comments as the community that we have. And so many people comment on other people. It's cool. It's a cool place to there. So go ahead and leave something there so we could go and interact with you, and others can as well. And something I wanted to share about myself is my brother, Ellie, keeps on telling me to go seek, an evaluation because he keeps on saying that he thinks I have ADHD. I don't know. I mean, if you're watching this podcast, maybe you've seen some of me on Inspiration for the Nation. Check it out. I don't know. I still don't think I have, but either way, thanks so much for watching and supporting the show. We get so many good suggestions from you guys on livingthechaim.com/suggest. So go ahead and reach us there. And we got so many more issues to tackle on That's an Issue. Be careful, be safe, be healthy, be happy, be holy. That's an issue. I don't know. Is that a catchphrase? I don't know. It could be a catchphrase. Thank you so much for watching and listening.
Living L'chaim.